Look at this. Hope you guys don't mind. Yeah, so again, change in thickness, right? And then that's what we use to create these letters. So in our tool, one of the tools, if you don't have a packet, is if you take this pencil and you shape it so that it makes a little chisel, right? A little chisel thing here. You can use that as a calligraphy pencil. Also the sort of the simpler way to do things, right? You take two pencils, you kind of tape them together, right? And you can do the same thing. It's going to be a little bit different, but you can use them to sort of create the same calligraphic line. Do you guys see that? Let's say if I wanted to do letter B, right? You can do it that way, right? So just two pencils side by side. And then of course, this way, you can either go in here and color this in if you'd like, or you can leave it like that, however you want to do it, okay? And add some flourishes here and there, make it nice and pretty. Okay, so again, if you we're not able to pick up a packet, don't worry. There's still ways that you can participate without having that. Now that's one way, one tool that you can use is the flat chisel, right? So this flat chisel nib, it kind of looks like this, right? On the fountain pens, right? And the pen goes out like this. Right, the flat edge. Now, the other way that you can change the thickness of letters is through brushes, right? So I can go in here and I can pick one of these brushes. And this is a different style. This is an actual brush, and the thickness actually comes from the pressure that you apply. So very light pressure makes a very thin line. Very thick, hard pressure makes a much thicker line, right? And so what you do is you train your hand to be a little bit like that, right? And so you see a lot of this in sort of Japanese calligraphy, Asian styles of writing, things like that, right? So here you go. You got that. What else do we have here? There's also a form of doing that with a fountain pen, right? If you want to be fancy and you really want to get into calligraphy, I would highly recommend buying yourself one of these. And this is a fountain pen, right? It comes apart. It's got a little cartridge here with the ink. You can get ink in different colors. And that's what this is supposed to look like. And if you look, it's got a nib at the end, and it's a very, oh, there you go, a nib at the end, and it's flat there, and then pointy there. So you can also use this as well. I highly recommend these. I love these because these kind of just glide over the page, and they put down a lot of ink, and it's very easy to use, very easy to learn how to use these, okay? And they do kind of tend to get messy sometimes. You might have ink on your hands by the time you're done. Okay. So those are your tools. Okay. If you have any questions on any of the stuff that I show you here, that last one, that fountain pen, comes in this nifty little kind of medieval looking box. And it has a series of pens in here. And it's got some little ink wells in here as well. So if you guys have any questions on that, just feel free to email me or message me however you'd like, and I'll try to make sure that I answer all of your questions. Okay, there we go. Okay, now we talked about the pens. We talked about, the different styles of pens that we have. Let's talk about the paper, because paper is important. Now, if you notice here, I laid down this big sheet of white paper, and because of my marker, I have some ink that kind of bleeds through, right? You also have, for example, here on my brush kind of bled into the paper. Well, this is just, printer paper. This is not designed to be written on necessarily, right? This is supposed to be this is designed specifically for the ink that comes from the printers, right? So this is not the best. What I recommend is that you go and you get yourself paper that is specific to calligraphy, okay? Either this kind of paper or something called parchment. You guys go to Michael's, Hobby Lobby, any place. I really like this brand. I've always used it it's always given me such great paper. They do such a good job. But yes, this kind of paper, okay? Now, the reason why I like this one so much is, I'm not going to be able to show you necessarily. Let's try this sheet here. It is. I don't know if you guys can see so much. I'm going to try to see if I can get this to work. All right, there we go. Can you guys see through the paper here? It's a little illuminated. It's got kind of lines. I'm not sure if my camera's really picking it up, right? I'm not sure if this is picking it up so much, but it's got some lines underneath it. So if you have something like I have, this little light box, right? You guys can see right through the paper, and you're able to kind of write without having to have any guidelines on it. So that's why I recommend this kind of, specifically this kind of paper, because it'll help you out a lot, okay? But you don't always have that, and also sometimes the materials that you're going to be creating aren't going to be necessarily on this paper. This is some thin paper as well. You might be making invitations, for a wedding, which require a much thicker paper, right? So you might not need that. So I'm going to show you techniques today so that we can kind of overcome this and use whatever paper you guys need, okay? Switch back to my light here. Okay, so there's that. We talked about paper. Let's talk a little bit about accessories. Let's go through this packet. So if you were able to sign up and you got a packet, it should look something like this, right? And let's go through it. Let's see what we have in here. So aside from the nifty pen that we got, we have the project instructions, right? Which we're going to go through. I'm going to set these to the side. And we've got these two sheets, okay? These look like those ditto sheets back in grade school, right? When you were learning how to write your ABCs, yeah? So that's actually the same thing. The only difference is that they're kind of a little bit different. You've got some lines that are a little bit slanted, and some of the lines are in color. They definitely have way more lines. And then you've got this goofy thing, okay? I'm going to explain that in a little bit, but there should be two of them, right? One of them is for your, for one side of the pen, the 1.5 millimeter one, right? And it's marked up here at the top. And then the other one, if you flip it over, the 3 millimeter one is this one over here, okay? So you've got that. You've got this nifty little thing, which if anybody's seen this before, you guys have been through some of the grade school stuff that we've been through here in these States. It's just practice, practice lines. So what you want to do is you want to practice how to use these little, use your pen to make these little shapes. And that way you train your hand to kind of flow through things, right? So that's that one. And then we've got some different alphabets, right? So this is a chancery. We've got black letter which are different styles of writing. We're really going to do a modification of this one. This is kind of my favorite, and that's what this one is. The practice sheets are set up for. And then you've got, I think you've got 3 or 4 sheets of the calligraphy paper, right? And you have tracing paper, which I understand right now is kind of weird to have tracing paper, but trust me, I'll show you how to do this. Because when you're creating things in calligraphy, right, you want to get the type as perfect as possible, right? So that means that you have to look at your spacing, the size of the letters that you want, the different decorations that you're going to have around there. And tracing paper is really going to help us do that, okay? So there's that. And this is just a duplicate of the rest of the stuff I got. Okay. So here we go. Put that to the side for a minute. And let me go back really quickly to the presentation, okay? And if anybody has any questions, please feel free, just jump in. You can either unmute yourself or you can throw it in chat. I'll try to see if I can answer them all in time. Let me share my desktop really quick. Okay, and we're back to our presentation. Okay, so here are the basics. All right, so what we're going to be using is the Nib style of calligraphy, okay, where we have a nib, sort of a flat writing surface, okay, and the width of it is called the nib width, okay. Now on the sheets that I showed you, you had that little tic-tac-toe type thing, the little chessboard at the end, and that's what this is, okay. So I'm going to explain all of these to you. So we are going to start right here with this black line. That's called the baseline. All of your letters are going to sit on this line, okay? With the exception of the round letters, most of them are going to be right on top of that line, okay? And then you're going to go up to the blue line, and that's going to be your X height. So if you were to draw, I'm sorry, not draw. If you were to write the letter X, it should come up all the way to this line and to this baseline. So it should fit right within these 2 lines, okay? The capital letters are going to be a little bit taller, so you're going to go up here to the capital line, right? And then we have something called the ascender and the descender, okay? And I have these weird numbers and this tic-tac-toe. Well, if you look down here, which is not letting me, if you look down at the bottom, each one of these squares represents 1 nib width. So when you go off and you do this on your own, you're going to have your own pens with your own nibs. There's millions of different nibs and different sizes. So the point of this is to take the pen that you're going to be using and use it to measure the height of your letters, okay? So this is 1 nib width, 2, 3, 4. So from the baseline to the X height is going to be 5 nib widths. From the baseline to the capital letter line is going to be 8 nib widths. And from the baseline to the ascender line, it's going to be 10 nib widths. Now, of course, these are just suggestions. You can do whatever you want with these. But if you come in and you pick up a calligraphy book, most good calligraphy books are going to tell you, they're not just going to give you the alphabet, right? They're going to give you the measurements that you use to create the alphabet correctly, okay? And typically what most letters are going to be, they're going to be anywhere from 5 to 7 in terms of X height, anywhere from 6 to 10 in the capital. Most of the time you're going to see that. Now, in order to create this slant, you also use your nibs up at the top here. And at the top, typically you just add whatever number of nibs you want so that it slants the entire thing. This one is on a pretty steep slant, right? You use from the baseline all the way up to the corner here, and you draw a line down. And that's what you use to kind of guide yourself. This is more of a slant that I usually do, but in this case, you're going to understand why I did it this way when we do our project. Okay. So what does that look like? Here you go. Most of the letters are going to fit in here. We have an H that has an ascender, and that's going to go all the way up to the red line up here. And we have a G, which is a descender, which goes all the way down to the descender line down here. But most of them rest somewhere within this baseline and go up to the X height here. Okay.
I got a question. Will your letters always have a ascender and a descender, or that's something you just did?
No, they don't always have that. But you need to plan for when you're typing text, when you're writing things, you need to plan for having an ascender and a descender.
Okay, so you need to have the. Okay, so you just need to have the space available. It doesn't mean that every letter is going to have an ascender and a descender.
Correct.
Okay.
And the reason why you want to have that extra space is because, especially when you're doing things in multiple lines, you need to be able to plan out where those ascenders and descenders go. So you might have, for example, an ascender on the second line that comes in between here in this G. I'll show you guys when we're doing the actual typing with. I'll show you what I mean. You guys have to plan out your entire text. This is not like writing a letter. This is actually, you are going to be planning a work of art. Okay? So that's why it's super important to understand some of these terms, because I'm going to be using them throughout the course here. And thank you for that question, by the way. Okay, so first things first, let's get started. Oh, Diane has joined us. First things first, let's get started here. Here are your instructions. These are mainly for you. We've covered most of the stuff, okay? One of the things that I do like to do is, first, I like to get my materials in order, right? So for right now, I'm going to need this one. Just for the sake of the camera, I'm going to be using the 3mm one. So if you have have your pen, you're going to be using the 3mm one. And I'm going to write, what am I going to do? I'm going to dedicate this to you all that are watching me, and I'm going to write thank you. Okay. Now, this wasn't very fancy, right? It's just thank you. Now, the reason why I wrote it first is, I don't know about you, but when I'm concentrating, I lose track of what letter I'm on. And so this is a way for me to make sure that I write and I spell everything correctly. This is sort of the what is it called? Auto check, not auto check. I forgot. The check, the spelling check, the spell check before spell check. Yeah, you have to spell it out, make sure that it's spelled correctly, and make sure that you add whatever things you need to add right here. Okay. Now, here's one of the things that I like to do as well. If you look at this, right here, I have a capital letter. Right? I have an ascender here, an ascender here. This is going to be a descender, so this is also going to be a descender here. And right there, there's a descender. Okay? So I'm taking a look and I'm seeing, okay, when I plan this out, I want to make sure that I leave space in between all of these. I want this U to kind of fit somewhere in there, right? And when I write this thank you. Okay, so I'm going to look at this and I'm going to plan it out. I want to say, okay, just eyeballing it. I want this U to be a little bit higher up. I want this to be, you know, one solid piece. So that's what I want to do. Okay. And then we'll put that to the side. I'm going to take
I got another question.
Yes, ma'am.
Why did you write you underneath thank you? Why didn't you just write it all the way across like you would do on a letter or another?
Okay. So one of the things that I like to do, um, when you draw a shape outside of this, right? When you draw your shape, basic geometric shapes are very appealing to people. Okay. So when you are writing, you also want to follow those kinds of guidelines, right? I want to have this little rhombus looking thing. So this thank you is going to fit a lot better if I stack it, thank and then you at the bottom. If I write it out, if I write thank you, I can do that. Definitely I can do that, but the shape is a lot different. You see that? It's a much narrower, much not as tall, right? It doesn't necessarily fit on an 8x10 page. It just kind of goes across it like a banner. This is something that you choose. As the calligrapher, you choose what shape you want this to look like. If you want it to look like a circle, or maybe you want it to look like a triangle. Whatever you
Okay.
choose for your type, that's why I chose that.
All right. So that was your preference.
Correct. Okay, I'm going to put this where I can see it over here. I'm going to take my guide and I'm going to take my, where did it go? Tracing paper. And this is part of the planning stage too. We are going to be writing, right? So if you guys are following along at home, we are going to be practicing how to write. This is not going to be nice by any means. And I'm going to be following this typeface, this one here. Okay. So I'm going to be doing a version of this. I like the lowercase letters a lot better than I like the uppercase letters. I've been doing this a long enough time to where I've kind of developed my own style, right? So I'm not going to be going exactly off of this, but you can definitely. But this is what I'm basing it off of. Okay, so right here. So there's that one. I'm going to put that over here where I can see that as well. And then I'm going to choose my min. All right. So and then once I have everything that I want, I'm going to get comfortable. Okay. One of the biggest things that people do is they try to write these things really fast, and you can't rush this. You just simply can't. So you want to, when you're writing in calligraphy, you want to have smooth downward strokes, right? They're very comfortable if you just go smooth and down. Don't worry so much about getting it perfect right now. We are just practicing, right? So I'm going to write thank you. And it doesn't matter where on this line, as long as it fits, I'm going to write thank you. So the first one, it's going to be different than this T, right? But I'm going to use these guides to guide me. So the T has a vertical up and down, and it's going to be a capital. So I'm going to start right in the middle right here and go straight down. Okay. And I'm going to follow this capital letter T all the way across, just like that. This does not look like calligraphy yet, right? It just looks like a letter T. But on the side here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a curl. And on the bottom here, I'm going to add another curl. Now, if you notice, what I'm doing is I'm going from top to bottom, left to right. Somebody asked me earlier, is it a problem if you're a lefty? No, it's not a problem. It's a matter of getting yourself comfortable with writing in sort of a purposeful way, right? The only thing that I do say is that, see, the ink smears very, very easily. So you have to make sure that you're very careful about not smearing the ink, because the ink here lays on top of the paper and it doesn't soak in. And typically when you have copy paper from the printer wants it to soak in because the printer's using the least amount of ink possible, so it's going to soak it in. But if you're writing in calligraphy, you're going to have a lot of ink and it has to sit on top. And so it takes some time to dry, right? All right, so we're going to do letter H. And here, you don't want to move the tracing paper too much, okay? So try to follow the guides from the bottom, but try not to move the paper at all. Make sure that it doesn't shift. So this is an ascender. I'm going to go straight down. I'm going to go like that, TH. And I'm going to put a little curl on the top. And if you notice, if you're following along with this, you can see the little curl on the top and the little thing on the bottom. These are called serifs, the little additions. This type of, if you're typing this, it's called sans serif because it's without the little serifs, the little tips at the end. Okay. I'm going to do letter A. And again, try to follow all of the vertical lines as closely as possible to those green vertical up and down diagonals. A. Letter N.
Excuse me. Which tip are you writing with?
I'm writing with the 3mm one, the thicker one.
The thicker one. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Try to follow the lines as best as you can. Okay, this is going to go up like a little bow. And then right from here, this is why I called this letter a descender, because I'm going to go like this. Watch. You see that?
There was a question. Sarah, he said, Cindy said, how much space should there be between the letters?
This is entirely up to you. If you have something that you are going to be writing, a lot, let's say that you have a lot of space to cover, right? It all depends on how you want to lay your text out. If you want, for example, to have this, I'm going to write this really quick. Let's say I want to have a lot of space. It's not so much how much space you have, it's whether the space in between is consistent. Okay, so if I have my spacing here is more than the spacing here, then we have a problem. And part of doing it this way is you can do it this way. And what you can do is once we transfer it over to when we really need, we can shift this paper around to shift and to adjust the spacing in between. So if you screw this up here, don't worry about it because you can always shift it around. Okay, so choose the spacing basically, depending on how much space you have, the thickness of your pen. If you have a much thicker It's also very important, especially if you're choosing a different writing style. Like for example, let's do doing black letter now. So this is a different style of writing. Right? Because this is a different style of writing, you're going to have different spacing between the two. So again, it all depends. I can't give you 100% answers like, oh yeah, you should do it this way. You should always measure this way. I can't, because it all depends on, there's so many variables in between that there's just no way for me to be able to tell you, yeah, do it this way. But what I can do is I can tell you, if you mess it up, make sure that these are consistent. If they're not consistent, like for example, right here, between the N and the K, it's a little bit closer than the A and the N here. If you mess it up like that, you can always go back and you can fix it, because this is still just the tracing paper, right? That's why we're doing this. Okay, let me get them there. Oh, somebody has asked me how to hold the pen. You know what? I skipped that actually. I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to. Let me show you how to do that, because that's super important. So when I'm writing, right, I want to make sure that my nib is at a 45-degree angle to the baseline, right? So if I were to draw a line right here, the thinnest line I could possibly draw is going to be at a 45-degree angle. Okay? That's super important. Thank you for reminding me about that one, because I forgot. Yeah. Now, the reason I do that is because when I go down, right, when I come down like that, it's the thickest it could possibly get. When I go on a 45-degree angle up like this, is the thinnest it's going to get, right? And when I do anything in between, so like let's say we're doing some figure eights, right? I go down and around, down and around. See how it's thicker on this side and thinner on this side over here? That's what you want. You want to be able to practice this. Right? I like doing these figure eights because it gets me really loose. Right before I started this class, I just really loosened my wrist here. And then you can do some of these as well. And you can follow this, the guide that I have in there for you. Okay. So, anyway, you guys were following along with this. Thank you. Okay. Most of these materials are very basic materials. You can find them in Michael's, Hobby Lobby, any of the craft stores that you frequent. You know, not very uncommon tools here. Okay, so I'm going to do that one more time, a little bit quicker. So T. Right. I'm going to put the curl on there first. Okay. And then go down. The A. And purposeful strokes, right? You want to make sure that you're writing, pulling all of the ink towards you. Okay. Okay. Little ribbon, and then the descender there. Thank. And then I'm going to do the U, right? Thank you. Make sure that you line up your paper towards the side here so that it's not kind of slanted too much. And then you do U. The Y on this one is typically, because it's a capital, it kind of comes up from over here. I don't like how that looks necessarily, so I'm just going to do the first one. And I'm going to make a descender all the way down. And then I'm going to start the Y down here for you. Okay. Again, you guys can choose how you do this. If you don't like my letters, that's fine with me. I don't get offended. Y, O, and then U. Right? You're pulling down, you're making these like little strokes, right? Thank you. Now, thank is all the way up here, and the U is all the way down here. Why? That doesn't look good. I'm going to take this out of the way. And now I'm going to get my sheet of paper. Now this is going to be the final piece that I'm going to make, right? And for this piece, I'm going to have something called a light box, which is just a light from underneath, right? Now, if you don't have a light box, they are expensive. So if you don't have a light box, maybe you have a coffee table, that like a glass coffee table or a glass table in your house. You can put a little light bulb or a little lamp up there without the shade underneath. Or maybe you have an old monitor that you don't use anymore, like a computer monitor. You can just turn it on and have it just be some white, light coming through. Or maybe you have a window. There's many different ways to get a little light box without it. This particular light box is actually just a table that we had with a glass top at the top. And I'm putting, I don't know, you can't really see it, but underneath the table, I just put a light bulb. That's all I did for it. I didn't go out and buy anything fancy. I just did it that way. Yeah. So for my final, I'm going to switch the lights here. And so here's the light box in action. So you can see. Now what this does is really nice, is if you look at it, now you can see where the thank you is, right? So I'm going to use, you can actually mark the, with a little pencil if you like, mark on the back side, right? On the back side of the paper, mark where you want your lines, right? You can do that if you want. This one's already kind of pre-marked for me, so I don't have to really do much. This is, again, the calligraphy paper. So I'm just going to line up and center the thank first. I'm going to make sure that it's nicely lined up right in the middle. And I'm actually going to slant it a little bit so that it's not 100% in. And again, this is your preference, however you want to do it. Okay. And now it's going to be super easy, because now you can just take your pen, same way you did it, and trace the exact letters. Now, this is where, if you made a mistake in the spacing, you can get to the letter that's perfect and then move the sheet on top so that it lines everything up, right? And I made a spacing mistake down here in the U, and I'll show you how I fixed it. I'm not going to slant it too much. And that's easy breezy. Now I just trace over what we've already done. And I'm not even thinking at this point, because I'm just tracing. Try to trace as best you can, and try to line up your words, your letters, sorry, as best you can. You might be a little bit off, that's okay. Okay, there we go. And now comes the magic part, because I'm going to move this when I do the thank you, as long as these verticals are as close as possible to the ones on top. So this H has to match this U kind of nicely, right? Don't make sure it's not like this, right? Because if you slant it too much on the second time, then you're going to mess it up. But make sure that the verticals are nicely matched up, and place your type wherever you want it. Now, right here is where you're going to be making your corrections. So if you don't like the way that you wrote it the first time, you can either go back and use the guides to write it again, or you can just fix it on the fly. There you go. That looks about right. Yeah, it's going to live right there. And then again, just trace it out. Okay, and here I have a spacing issue, right? So I have a more space between the U and the O than I have between the Y and the O. So I'm just going to adjust it, and I'm going to move it slightly just so that I can give myself a little more space over here and make sure that that's nice and perfect. And again, nice, even strokes. There you go. This is your final product. Now, typically, you can look at this and you can say, okay, well, this is done, right? But this is a work of art, right? You remember, this is something that you're going to want to keep for generations to come, right? So what I like to do is I like to add a little bit of flourish to this. So I'm not necessarily done with all of this. I want to maybe have a line down here, and I'm not writing on anything just yet. Maybe I want to have a line down here. Maybe I want this K to curl a little bit more. And this is where you start planning sort of the embellishments that you have in the middle. Maybe you can put a little something in this negative space here, or maybe you just want to keep it the way it is. I actually kind of like it the way it is, but let's add some embellishments down here at the bottom. Oh, that's the wrong side. Okay. Embellishments at the bottom, and don't be afraid to mess this up. You cannot. This is already looking really good. There you go. And this again is all a matter of preference. Whatever you like to do, you can add little dots. All right. You can extend this K out a little bit so that it looks a little bit more curly. Okay, that's about as much as I want to do with this one then. That is about as much as I want to do with this one. What do you guys think?
That looks awesome. Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, and this is really did not take very much. I mean, if you saw the process, um, you guided yourself the entire way, um, and just make sure that you stick to those rules and you're just very careful and you practice. And honestly, I spend days, and you can see most of my planners and my notebooks, even as a professional. If I get a calligraphy pen in my hand, you're going to see a lot of this. You're going to see a lot of this all over my planners and all over my, I do a lot of these as well. Just practice. Make sure that you get the practice of, you train your hand to be a little bit more flowy, you know? And like I said, even if you have a couple of pencils, you can get a lot of really nice effects just on these pens. Sometimes I actually like doing it just in pencil, just so that I can see these sharp little corners here, right? Something like that. Right? Different type of, yeah. It doesn't take very much. It's super cheap, and these pens, I think this pen in particular, this one right here, was like $6. And we bought them in bulk, so it was even cheaper. The paper, I think this paper, for a stack of 150, is it 150 or 50? It was something like 15, I didn't pass $15. And honestly, the rest of it is just type, the printer paper, because it really didn't, do very much. It's super cheap, super fun, and you can even start adding colors to it. So they sell, so like packets like these, like the one I showed you before, these ones, with multiple pens and multiple nibs, right? They have different colors. I think you can appreciate it better now. A little bit backlit, but you can see the different colors that you can get just from the different nibs. So again, the possibilities are endless with this. There is one thing that I would like to point you to, and that's the link to the resources that I was using here. Okay, I want to make sure if you guys got absolutely nothing from my presentation, I want to make sure that you guys are set with the link to, no, I just lost it. Link to the materials that I just sent. And again, I'm going to be using these. And one of the things about my programs and the programs that we're kind of doing here at Blue Island is we want to have sort of a library of materials. So if you came in late, or if you missed part of it, some connection issues, whatever, I'm going to share my link, my screen with you here. What I'm going to do is I've got this document. Which is basically the printed out version. Okay, I've got this document online available to you, and I've got some resources here like books. Right, we've got books here in the library that you can check out, and these are live links. You can go in here and click on them and place a hold on these books, and you can come curbside pickup and pick these up. Okay, straight from the library. And I've got some resources down here. This is the class presentation that we just did. Okay, these are some YouTube videos, just super satisfying videos of different techniques of calligraphy. It's just so meditative, so nice and calming. And I'm actually going to put the recording of today's class down here as well. So if you guys have, this is going to live down here. But I'm going to send you this link. Let me change up my camera here. I'm going to send you this link. It's in the chat. And that link is going to be live for as long as I work here. And if we do this this calligraphy program again, which it looks like a lot of you enjoyed it, I think I'll do this again maybe sometime in the winter. It might not be 100%, but we'll send you emails on it. If you guys want to do this again, we'll definitely do it again. But anyway, we'll add to this document. This is going to be a running document. So the more I do it, the more rich the materials become, right? So we start adding more and more to the levels of resources that we add here. Like I said, these are also printed out for you, so you guys can look at it if you don't have a way to connect. And then the presentation and this video recording is going to be available for you online whenever you need it.
Really enjoyed the class. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gayla. Thank you so much for all of you for coming by. If you have any questions, I'm going to stick around for a little bit.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It was great. Thank you.